Not streaming it from here, are you?
Yes, I am. Hello, folks.
I'll go mute at pointing.
Welcome to a video I wasn't expecting to stream today, but as some of you may or may not know, Dr. Clarke has come down with the lurgy, to put it mildly, and he kindly asked me if I would do a substitute for Bruships today. So that is exactly what I'm doing. I will try my best to answer every question as best I can, but I unfortunately am not Dr. Alexander Clarke. So I may lack some of his knowledge base that he possesses, sadly. But I will give it a darn good try. Right. So I will keep an eye on the Bruships questions for now. But what I will do is just very temporarily while we're just going on.
Who's coming in for you? Aha.
Just give me a second, folks. Well, it doesn't really matter since not many of you will hear this anyway, because, well, this is before you've all flooded in.
No. Runon's test has worked.
Yep, bot's bedded in and going up now.
Right, fantastic.
It's not coming up on my YouTube.
You might have to click on the link that he put in earlier. Okay, and then you will have to basically refresh what you've got in YouTube. And it should appear, and it should appear at the top of his list of live.
Yeah, you have to if you're on the page and I go live, you have to refresh before it comes up.
If anybody asks you any dumb questions about it, be able to help you. Hopefully they won't ask any questions of that variety.
Okay, it's in Master at Arms, along with the link to the stream. So if you want to hit the nuclear everyone button and just let them know it's going on, and we'll see how many we get, if any. Oh, hang on, Ruin on. Let me just let me just, if it'll let me. Bonk. You are now a managing moderator, Ruin on. Congratulations, you've been promoted.
No one transcription should have that much power. Where am I at here?
6 people watching right now. We'll see how many we get, I suppose. Well, I suppose we just... by the way, everyone watching, as you all do filter in, the bot is... let me shut that up.
I am back.
The bot is working, so any questions you ask will be put into Bruships Q&A, as normal. I'm streaming this from Dr. Clarke's server, so I will be able to see the questions as they are asked. So please do ask away. And in order to have your question appear like that, put exclamation mark question followed by your question, and the bot will transfer it over. So, without further ado, let's get started.
Are you streaming right now, Fleet?
Yes,
Yep.
I am. I'm streaming Fleet's Emergancy Bruships replacement for Dr. Clarke, because he is not up to it this evening. So, well, it was Timu's suggestion at first, but I just suggested it to Dr. Clarke, and he said it was a good idea, so here we are. And we'll have to see how many people actually appear, because there's a difference between... maybe if Dr. Clarke...
Oh yeah, there's definitely a difference.
Maybe if Dr. Clarke put up a community post on his channel, it might help. But if not, that's
Oops,
fine.
that's the wrong thing.
We could possibly put it on the general as a ping.
Well, it's already gone out as an announcement, but the problem is, is that only a fraction of the people who watch his channel are in the Discord. That's the thing.
Oh, that's...
So, what we need to do is hopefully we Dr. Clarke to put out a community thing on his channel quickly.
Give me a minute and I'll drop him a line.
Yeah, because then that'll bring people over while this is happening. Because I imagine
I probably lost my other Discord account.
I imagine a lot of people who would be somewhat annoyed.
Fleet, can you remember to pin a post to the top to give Indrunon's instructions about how you post a question and where questions go to?
Ah, yes, I will do this. Bonk. Pinned. Wow, we have 5 people, so I guess we now just we're now waiting for questions, I suppose.
I think we're probably the 5.
Well, it's the thought about actually, it's the thought about trying that counts.
You've got people like Knight who
Oh, was Knight appeared?
I'm not going to know about. Well, no, he won't know about this until Dr. Clarke puts something into his...
USS Montana 67. What's this? This is Fleet running Bruships this week because Dr. Clarke is very ill, and he asked me if I would, and I said I would. So here I am.
Unfortunately, he has fallen victim to Nurgle's gift.
The lurgy, as we call it over here in the UK.
I think pneumonia is more than lurgy.
Bad.
Yeah. Just whistling past.
Yes.
Just whistling past the graveyard.
But yes, so I am doing Bruships today. So if you have a question, check the pinned comment message at the top of the chat, and you'll see how to ask questions for me to answer. We'll probably be running till about 10, 10:30. So it'll be fairly short, but it'll be fairly sweet because I do have work tomorrow. But it's better than nothing. And then, of course, tomorrow, we get the big extravaganza, where I've somehow managed to wrangle, finally, the entire ship-shape crew into a Discord call, plus some hangers-on, which will be fun.
I am concerned.
Oh, you're not the only one.
I am frightened.
Yeah, me too. I've got to keep like 25
Yeah,
different...
I love it when... I find it slightly concerning that there's so many companies here that don't do a phased rollout of stuff on critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed.
Yeah, it's very sad. I actually didn't suffer from it at all, funnily enough.
Yeah, thankfully my employer does not seem, or at least the systems of my employers that I depend upon to do my job, which are very minimal because I am a tradie, were not affected.
Yeah, same as me. I just wasn't affected at all, so I just somehow managed to walk away from that fine.
However, I do feel bad for anybody who may have
Oh yeah, it did not go well.
Lost their lives as a result.
Oh dear. I didn't realize it got that bad.
And if anybody is asking, it took out a lot of EMS. So a lot of the 911s are, for you guys, 999 systems, were reliant on CloudStrike. So when CloudStrike went down, when those systems went down, it took EMS with it.
Oh, Jesus, no.
And as soon as you do that, you're putting lives on the line.
That is not good.
So yeah, it is not. It'll be interesting to see if the company survives in any meaningful capacity.
Paul Amos. We got a question from Paul. What can Defoe tell us about Yonai? I have a simple sentence for you, and this is the extent of my knowledge. He was a man in Japan. That's the extent of my knowledge. That's it. I can't even remember his first name. That's it. That's what you get.
Mitsumana. It's Mitsumana. Mitsumana Yonai.
Yeah. Yeah,
Admiral, former Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Advisor to the great idiot MacArthur.
Yes.
Well, he was somewhat useful occasionally.
When he wasn't being completely
Does that
insane.
mean we can? Does that mean we can promote him to the useful idiot MacArthur?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
That would be like saying the useful idiot BT.
Hmm.
I'd admonish you for that statement.
But it's true.
What? BT's a useful idiot.
Oh, yeah, good, fair enough. All right, I can see the point. I can see the point.
That's what I'm saying is you don't use useful.
Hmm.
Sorry.
I'm bouncing around like 25 different servers checking on things.
Why are you bouncing around 25 different servers?
Because I am, I guess.
You know what? Because we're all speaking on here, we're not necessarily helping part of the broadcast. You think it'd be useful if we introduce ourselves?
Oh, yes. So joining me are a few excellent people from Dr. Clarke's server. I felt it only appropriate that I grab as many people purely by chance as I could to supplement my own knowledge. And also because I don't do these things alone, because I lack the knowledge. I require people to bounce ideas off of. It's why Fleet's Round Ramblings is always a show with multiple hosts, because Fleet requires multiple people to bounce things off of. So, going from me down, this is your lovely host, the Fleet of Oceans, the man, the myth, the legend, lover of ships of the French variety. Below me is Paul Amos, long-time Dr. Clarke supporter, and the most loyal and prudent Fleet of Oceans observer that there is. Below him is the man with the codes, the person who weaves electronic magic, Runon, the bot master.
Close enough.
And below him we have Steve, which is of course excellent.
Yeah, well,
Is that...
I know a little bit about submarines.
I gave you guys the build-up and it just didn't.
No, I'll explain. I know a little bit about submarines. My father was a submariner in World War II.
Ah.
So I've got a little bit of I've read a fair few books now, and I've actually been to visit both the Type 7 and the Type 21 in Germany.
Ah.
So I do know a little bit about submarines.
Very nice. So Steve knows about submarines. And then, of course, there's the meme machine.
Hello.
Right at the bottom.
It's the Duke of
It's not at
Pettington.
the bottom. Minister of Mirth is Duke of Pettington.
Minister of Banter and Culture.
Okay, all right.
Don't blow your own trumpet too hard.
Yeah. There is telling the best version of yourself and then outright lying.
Did you get a line to Clarke, by the way, about the community post?
Oh, crap. I am intelligent. Yes, I am the resident bot wrangler, electrician, and American in most of these server-side discussions.
Usually I'm outnumbered by Americans. This time it's the other way around. You're outnumbered by us.
For somebody who has not directly interacted with your channel before, who are the three people flanking you on your background image?
Oh, okay, so...
Rack, chair, and I can't remember who the third one is.
Oi! I was going to answer that one! So, to take the wind out of that man's fire again, on the far left is Drac. To the right of him is the garden chair, whose profile picture is Corporal Jones from Dad's Army in his regimental reds. In the centre is me, looking very good, I do say so myself. And to the right is who I like to call the random idiot or Dixie, who is one of the other on again, off again co-hosts of Ramblings.
Okay. I will rant one thing about their profile picture.
What?
That face is too confused to have the fingers on the trigger. Hit booger hook off bang switch.
No, that's the whole point. He's about to start shooting people.
He looks like he's confused.
Yeah.
The trigger discipline is absolutely awful.
It's part of the joke.
Listen, I am anal retentive about very few things in life because it's just easier, and I don't have the spoons to be anal retentive about everything. Gun safety is one of the few things I'm absolutely anal retentive about.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Well, you know, you don't respect the firearm, it will kill you.
Yes.
And there's many people who've never learnt that lesson. And they're not alive anymore.
Funny how that one works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All their kids aren't alive because they didn't do something sensible and the kid got hold of the firearm.
Yep. Defoe, I'm surprised you don't have cyclic.
No, cyclic isn't on regularly enough at all to be part of the co-host crew. I'm going to add Dragon and Foxo into there whenever I get the money to pay for the commission, and because they've become regulars.
Dr. Clarke has put the message up.
And Dr. Clarke, oh, he has.
Yeah, he's put it up in general, but that's not exactly what I was going after.
Yeah, that's not quite.
Don't worry, before I send this off, I'm gonna just make sure I'm not double dipping because I do that sometimes and I feel bad then.
Yeah. Okay, some people are okay. There's more people.
Anyway.
There's more people seemingly seeing it in general, so that's something.
Yeah, his permissions are.
No, Dragon, you did not hear random ramblings. This is Fleet's emergency Bruship replacement. I am taking over from Dr. Clarke as part of my long-term plan to eventually usurp him and claim the throne. No, but in all seriousness, it's nice to see you, Dragon, but mostly this is me, it's basically Dr. Clarke's Bruships is basically his version of the Dry Dock Ramblings formula, which all three of us operate on. You know, people ask questions, etc., all that jazz and pizzazz. The problem that we've got is that most of the channel aren't in, as in most of the YouTube channel aren't in Dr. Clarke's Discord, so haven't actually seen that things are occurring.
Yep.
Sadly.
And some of them adamantly refuse to go into the Discord.
So we've got to get a community post
Which
out.
is why we have a question and answer.
Yeah.
Which is why we have a question and answer bot.
Yes, and that is actually set up and running.
Is there any way to dual stream this from both of your?
I can't stream to Dr. Clarke's channel, not without logging into the channel. Which
Yeah, you'd have to go to a brokering service or do it jointly.
Yeah, which would be not really feasible right now.
Yeah. The simple answer is no. The actual answer is yes.
What we need is for Alex to post a thing in his channel on YouTube.
He's
So
commented
it's
back
live
to
there.
Knight to Knight 6831. Apparently, I did mention a community post, or well, I said post to the YouTube channel, but
You're currently doing a shit girl,
if
DD.
nothing else,
Brandon Larson asks, "How am I, Fleet?" I'm fine. It's the reason I'm here. I'm fine.
we haven't driven him nuts yet.
That's why I'm here.
If it's even still
Yeah.
even if it's even still possible to drive him nuts.
I've got my 2 marbles. They bang around inside my head. It's fine.
Oh, look at Mr. Fancy Pants over here with his 2 whole marbles.
Yeah, I know. I'm
He's
rich.
got more than President Biden.
Let's not.
I'll make sure he loses them.
Let's not get into. Let's not. I tried to. Well, he says he tries to avoid modern politics on his channel, when he, like, all of the other ramblings will just sit there and stand there and go, "Yeah, no, you lie."
Yeah, but
No,
Bruships
please,
does.
like I say, there's a pin question at the top, tells you how to ask questions. We're kind of here to support Fleet where we can.
Yes, I basically need to bounce things off. Oh, we're in general. I didn't realise we were in general.
I'm gonna ask Fu a question on here because I
Mhm.
can for the first ever time. Fu, what is it with you and the love of French dreadnoughts, which make most other people want to
Okay, first off,
use their lunch?
I hate French
You mean
dreadnoughts.
scrap iron?
I hate French dreadnoughts as much as the next man because good lord, they really mess the pooch on those. However, French pre-dreadnoughts were actually going somewhere and moving with some degree of decency. You've got Hoche, arguably she's both the first French modern battleship and the last ironclad. The fact that they even built something as...
Do you like her?
I do, absolutely. She's grown on me, shall we say. There's also then
Like a fungus.
not like that. There's then her 3 half-sisters in the Marceau class, which are just the Hoche concept taken to its logical conclusion, with much higher freeboard, barbette-mounted guns of large caliber. And actually a less extreme tumble home than some of the other French ships that would follow. You've then got the Charles Martel. You got then there was going to be the Charles Martels that were going to follow on from the Marceaus, but didn't. Then you've got Brennus, which is arguably the first definite French pre-dreadnought. I don't like her because of what she could have been. If she had 5,000 more tons of displacement, she could have been the most powerful pre-dreadnought in Europe when completed. But she didn't, so she was arguably the worst of the French pre-dreadnoughts. Then you get the Charles Martel class, which, in my humble opinion, are... Yes, I know some people technically class them as multiple separate classes of ship, but their rough capabilities were fairly similar. So I like to group them into a class of 5. They were not completely terrible. They were fairly comparable to their peers. There is the tumble home, but that only really starts to be a problem if you start taking in hits below the waterline in a major way, and you start to list. As long as your list is under control, you're still mostly fine.
You see, I've got my copy, Fleet. You see, I've got here my copy of James.
Yes.
for World War I. And you look at them, and let's just say, I do think other nations had a better idea of what they were trying to do. I think the Italians are slightly better.
Oh yeah, other nations definitely had a better idea of what they wanted to do. Absolutely, the French were struggling with lack of leadership and central direction. Like the
I've
ships.
actually had to come from my sick bed.
Oh, we have a Dr.
Bleat.
Clarke.
I've
Oh.
had to come from my sick bed to explain to you once again that you keep saying the French are good ships. I know you love them, but love is blind. Please, look at them properly.
It's
They have some really interesting. One of the troubles they do have. Excuse me. And this is why I will not be on for long. But thank you, everyone, and thank you very much, Bleat, for doing this. Because I was feeling very guilty not doing a live this evening.
It's fine. Just before you go into your little explanation, would you put out a community post on your channel letting your members know this is happening? Because
I will do. I will do that after I've done it.
Yeah, thank you.
I will put out a community post. Don't worry. I'm just going to say, the French ships, one of the troubles you have is that the different yards actually have their own ideas of what damage control measures should be and different systems for how to operate them. So for one starter, so ships produced in one yard, to get the automatic doors to go down in the case of flooding, you hit a lever. For another yard, you have to turn a wheel.
Oh.
For another yard, you have to turn a wheel and hit a lever.
Okay, so there are some niggly problems. I admit.
It means you don't have a standardized system. The French government spent ages trying to get us to do a standardized system. They eventually got it, but
okay, you need to go to bed.
Alright, Fleet, I have to thank you, Dr. Clarke. I have to say this. If you have to retrain your crew on basic damage control every time they change ships, that is not a nibbly bit of a problem.
Yeah, it's quite serious. It's quite a serious issue. No, I was saying that to me, I think Russians do those early battleships better. I think the Italian ones are better. I think the Austrian ones are much better. But that's my opinion. Of course, the Royal Navy ones proved themselves moderately adequate when it came to sinking at the Dardanelles. But you look at the German ones, you know, they take them with them at Jutland and they just become a liability. Because they're 10 years out of date.
Gorbian, I don't think it's going to kill Dr. Clarke. I do think, though, it might further shake his faith in humanity.
I have faith in humanity. Well, I don't. Well, he'll still have faith in humanity. I like I have a fondness for the unloved ships, shall we say?
You mean scrap iron?
No, I didn't say scrap iron.
It's
Okay,
scrap iron.
actually, you know, here's my concept for why the French sovereigns and early dreads were the way they are. The French wanted to make ships so bad that even the British wouldn't want them.
Ah, I see. It's a theory. It is decidedly a theory.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've got to
I'm
admit,
just waiting for the flood of people.
They're better lookers than the Americans with the cage mask.
Yeah, but you see, the cage match you could refit fairly easily,
Well,
as we did. The things that are French pre-dreads, however, I am not so confident about.
Looking at you, North Carolina of 1906.
Maybe.
No, you can never explain what you love. So it was basically a question to get things started, and to basically find out why food things.
I'm going to be right back, alright?
Alright.
Yeah. So, Fu. Next question.
Yes.
If you had a possibility of kicking the French Admiralty up the backside in 1895,
yes,
what would you do differently?
Oh,
as guided by Dr. Clarke there.
Sorry, Fleet. Before you jump in on that, Fleet, Gorbian. No, but yes, I'm going to keep it locked just for the moment. To keep things simple. If you have a question by which you cannot, you can't fit it into YouTube chat, let me know and I can unlock it. But I think moving forward, I'll have to talk with Dr. Clarke about this on his channel. I may just continue to keep this channel locked just to make things simpler. There are some plans that we have going on over there that will make it far easier if that channel is locked and a bot and admin only channel instead of the free for all that it typically is. Not saying that the free for all is inherently bad, just that it causes some issues. Go ahead, Fleet.
Okay, so I'm just doing some checks real quick. Okay, so I'm already stuck with all of the Charles Martels. Okay, that's not ideal. And the Charlemagnes are building. So that's not ideal, but I can work with this. We've managed to get build times down to a relatively reasonable 3 to 3.5 years, which isn't too bad. And we're still in the 1890s. So first thing we do is it's not the French Admiralty that needs to kick up the arse. It's the French dockyards. So first thing I'm doing is I am grabbing some French Marines, I'm marching into the dockyards, and then basically I'm saying, right, anyone who... So here are your designs. These are French Marines. This is the design you are to follow. We've designed it. And I want the ships to come out like that. I don't want them to be tinkered with. I don't want them to be edited. I don't want them to be expanded, contracted, whatever you like. I want you to run the calculations to make this design work, and then build it. Capiche? And then any yard that fails to meet this requirement is immediately nationalized.
Well, I was going to say I'd avoid the first stage and say, right, we are nationalizing your yard. And we're going to create the Republic Dockyard. Can't call them King's Docks.
The thing is, with that, you basically will cause an uproar. The problem is this is France. So you have to have a reason and casus belli before you can do anything like that. So you've basically got to give them the right. Do not fuck up again, otherwise X.
You bring up the example of all the terrible ship designs, as mentioned by Dr. Clarke, that they're not obeying. So they need the equivalent of a Royal Dockyard.
Yes, they do. But if I'm coming in as
if you pay the workers in that Royal if you pay the workers in that Royal Dockyard more money than the private companies were paying, then you're not going to get any complaints from the French Republican idealist peasants.
The problem is that I'm coming in as a new head of the French Navy. I will not be able to do what you suggest, basically because the yards will be able to convince the government to not back me by saying, oh, it was the previous head of the Navy's fault. You can't just nationalize us out of nowhere. I've basically got to hit them with the stick first and give them a chance, and any that fail will be nationalized. You've basically got to do it that way so that they can't use any of their influence with the French government to save them. Because I've already given them another chance in my new regime to not fail. And who knows?
Okay.
And who knows? Maybe some of them won't fail. Maybe some of them might actually come out with some decent things.
The other thing you could do too is attach a rider to all active and proposed contracts that a senior uniformed naval architect will be the, for lack of any better term, customer's inspector to each yard with the authority, with stop work authority. And any stop work orders are not paid for by the government.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially,
wow.
I will shut this yard down if you do not adhere to the designs. Are we ready to move on to Larson's question? Because I think he needs to clean, or they, I should say, needs to clean something up. Otherwise, it's a very simple answer.
Okay.
Larson, are you including spares and tech manuals in that? And the maintainers and pilots and everything? Because if it's just fuel and ammo, and no spares for the F4s or the tankers, you're not going to get 3 months of operations out of them.
But assuming that they are,
so I guess,
assuming that everything is in that, you're looking at well, how would I describe this? It's basically the Chinese human wave attacks stop. Because any of them that are being attempted, oh, would you look at that, it's a flight of A4s. Oh, they've got things under their wings. Oh, the entire mountain is now just fire.
Yeah, F4s, but assuming they've got, their full carrier battle group strike mix, yeah, they can do a lot of damage very quickly.
Like, you may be able to put the UN forces back onto the offensive again. With the amount of damage you'll be able to inflict to the Chinese. It's not so much their ability to carry ordnance and deliver it that changes. It's the amount of napalm they're bringing back with them. And how useful that will be in Korea.
I'm going to add on a riser, because he's not put anything on there, Brandon hasn't, about the weapons that these aircraft can carry. So I'm assuming they're going in with the F4Cs.
They get everything they got IRL.
And Sparrows. So that's going to have a big effect on the Koreans' ability to control their own airspace. Because there's no way a MiG-17 in a code.
Steve, you are having some interference or otherwise breaking up.
So next is too much. Gorbian asks, well, should we probably move the hosts to? Oh, yeah.
I was going to ask
in general.
that.
Yeah, we should probably move to. Which one can I access as a flotilla leader?
I'm going to throw you in there.
Thank you. So let me have a look where we were. Oh. Well, there goes my channel.
Are you even monetized to begin with?
Not yet, no, so I'm alright.
They're not going to strike for that.
Gorbian asks, if Hawaii had been grabbed by a European power that isn't the UK, would it have seen the same investment as the US put into it? It'd be in the middle of nowhere for, say, the German Empire. Right. Okay. Cracks knuckles. Let me break it down. If it depends on the nation. If it's France, they will treat it as a coaling station in the Pacific between the Caribbean. It won't see much investment, and it will probably still be ruled by the royal family of Hawaii as some sort of weird quasi-French puppet state, like Morocco and Algeria were. Sorry, Morocco and Tunisia, not Algeria. Algeria is ruled from France proper. If Germany gets it, that will become the Kaiser's new favourite Pacific possession. And horrific things will happen to the Hawaiian populace. But I don't think you wouldn't see the same investment as the US would put into Hawaii. If the Spanish get it, that is gonna massively complicate the Spanish-American War, because suddenly the Spanish can just base ships out of Hawaii, and the US cannot, and it will be one of the things the US will seize in the Spanish-American War. If the Italians get it, why, first of all? Secondly, they have no use for it. If the Austrians get it, same thing. Why? What's the point? If Russia gets it, that's more interesting. If the Russians get Hawaii, then they probably would put investment into it for the same reasons the US did. That is a extremely potent position for them to project power in the Pacific. For the Russian Empire, Hawaii is an incredible prize.
But the Japanese could also take it, or even the Dutch.
True.
Yeah, I would say
have influence in the Pacific.
True, but it was European powers I was going through, so I didn't really.
I mean, the Dutch are.
Well, the Dutch.
Yeah, true.
It's a
And the Japanese have already beat.
A lot of island colonies.
The Dutch have also got an interest in the Pacific, and
problem is for the Dutch, Hawaii's just a drain on their finances. It doesn't give them anything. It's east of the things they want to defend.
Yes, but what it can give them, and it depends upon what the bias is of the powers that be in the Netherlands at the time that they take it. It gives them an alternate route where if their neighbors in Europe decide to get froggy, they have some insulation and some secondary travel route to continue to get resources back to possibly a friendly European ally or their own home ports.
Possibly.
They wouldn't be as dependent on the British government's goodwill with the ability to refuel ships at Hawaii as they would be otherwise.
Well,
and the other thing is,
Uh-oh. Big Chief's back. He has opinions.
Oh,
About to get squished.
It depends when they get there. If they have it before the Crimean War, they probably lose it during the Crimean War because we're talking of Britain. And Britain has a habit whenever there's a war going on with someone and they've got island colonies around the world. They like to take it.
Aren't you supposed to be ill?
Point of order, Doc. Are we talking about the Dutch or the Russians?
Dutch or Russians.
Okay.
Russians for the Crimean War. Dutch. The British at various points took certain things off them quite happily.
I was going on the assumption that the
and you have to remember, the reason the Russians sold Alaska to the Americans was because they were sure the British were going to take it off them anyway. So they decided they make some money for it and give it to someone who the British probably wouldn't take it off. believing they would still be able to access the resources because they were a superior nation. So their traders would automatically dominate Alaska.
I was about to say that the one power that Europe wouldn't want to have in control of your island is Belgium. Given what happened in the Congo.
To be frank, I wouldn't want Belgium to control anything that I live on in that particular period of time.
Yeah. It's not good. Empires run from Belgium never do well and are never that good for democracy or anyone's rights.
So just for those who are arriving from Dr. Clarke's community post, the bot is working, so please do put !question followed by your question to get your question into the Discord, into the Q&A chat.
And Fleet even has a picture which I was going to flash up at some point today if he wants to use it. Because, of course, it's the 11th anniversary of me getting my PhD today.
Also, I want to poke back at something Seneca said. I think Russia prefers warm water ports that it has a terrestrial connections. Also, Seneca, I am a mod now in Fleet's channel, and I will time you out for puns that bad. I have no compunction about doing that. That was bad.
What I will say is that for this question, I was assuming that the overthrow of the Hawaiian government takes place in 1893. So the Russians would get it then, which would be of great use to them during the Russo-Japanese War.
They'd lose it in the Russo-Japanese War.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it could.
The Japanese would take that without a hesitation.
Was the but then I doubt they would have. They might have, but was the canal open for the Russo-Japanese War?
Right, I've got coughing coming on, so I'm going to disappear again.
That would be an interesting situation coming later if the Japanese have got it, because
Japanese War was
1914, wasn't it, for the canal?
I'm looking that up now.
1890, I think. I think it's not 1913, 1914.
The canal was completed in 1914. The Russo-Japanese War was done well before then.
1905, I think.
1905. Yeah, because Roosevelt gets a Nobel Peace Prize for it.
I guess there is too a question of what is the reaction in Washington if the Japanese take Hawaii?
At that stage, are they interested in it? Because
I would imagine.
It's not the Spanish-American War. Did the Americans really seriously get interested in having colonies?
I mean, bear in mind, during the overthrow, the Naniwa is in Hawaii with Togo aboard as her captain. She's literally docked there during the overthrow. If we really want to throw the ball out of the court, we could have the Queen petition the Japanese for aid, and Naniwa could land her marines with Togo in command. Which would be hilarious. And at that point, you've basically got an escalating situation where the monarchy is a Japanese protectorate at this point, but is still nominally independent. You've got a US that is miffed but can't technically do anything since... Bear in mind, the plot to overthrow the Queen and get annexed by the Americans was basically led by a bunch of rich landowners and American-descended citizens of Hawaii. It was not an American plot. It was supported by the Americans, but was not an American plot. And it was only supported after it actually began. So if it dies in its cradle, then Japan would likely, with Japanese aid, it's likely that Japan would take Hawaii. Because, well, not take, but have it as a protectorate.
I mean, the only problem is it's a bit far away from Japan at the time.
Yeah.
Any serious level.
And that's kind of my push. It's one of those things of who wins the argument. Because I would make the argument that the U.S. Is just racist enough at the time that it will not be very happy about having nominally U.S. citizens and businesses under the control of Tokyo. And as long as the U.S. can keep everybody else out of the fight, they might piss off the British, but they probably won't get into a shooting war with the British.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, say again, Steve. You've got a
breaking up badly, Steve.
Yeah.
The Anglo Alliance doesn't happen until the very beginning of the 20th. So Japan doesn't have a big.
Steve, I'm sorry we can't.
Yeah, that 90% of that got lost.
You want me to
in
log out?
transmission.
I'm gonna give it up. Okay, if my
Sorry,
channel's
Steve.
really bad, I'll log out. That's welcome.
Right. That's a shame. But yeah, that's a thing. So we have a question now about the Age of Sail. Not an area I'm very familiar with, but I'll give it a crack. I do have some basic knowledge. What if the first action of the new French Navy is to razzie every ship of the line they have? How does that change the Napoleonic Wars? Congratulations, France has just annihilated its battle line.
Yeah, they get obliterated by the English third rates and up because it's not just the speed. You get a speed advantage and a durability advantage off of a Raz-Aid ship of the line.
That is only against frigates, however. That does not apply.
Well, they'll probably get a speed and maneuverability advantage against first rates or against ships of the line. The problem is there are certain points you have to defend, certain choke points, so on and so forth. And when the Royal Navy shows up with a couple squadrons of battleships and the French can only show up with Razes, those battleships will be, those Razes will be completely decimated by just the simple fact that the British heavy guns can sweep the main deck of the French Razes.
You've got a one deck advantage straight away.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have a huge amount more in maneuverability. They may have a little bit extra speed through the water. When it comes to actually tacking and things like that.
Yeah, they're still going to be mostly as sluggish on the response to the rudder as an actual ship of the line.
It's still the same hull shape below the water.
Yeah.
So all you've done is to take a little bit of weight out and enabled you to maybe increase the weight of some of your guns on the second gun deck. But the fact that you've lost a whole gun deck, that's a lot of firepower that you're not going to make up in weight of guns.
No.
So they would be put.
But yeah, that's the French have basically lost the naval war before it's even begun. There's no hope of a Trafalgar. There's also, in fact, this may even change to the point that the Spanish will just the Spanish who joined the French because they were winning on land and decided that if they joined them they could win at sea, are going to take one look at this French decision and go, no, no, we're not joining the French. They've just killed their own fleet for reasons we can't fully understand. Why would we join these madmen?
Yeah, it's...
And also you have the thing with the Spanish. They don't have a professional seafaring situation. Most of their crews are on 2-year contracts.
Mm-hmm.
There are some who are full-time, or take it on as a job, but most of them are on 2-year. So you can have some ships which have got a crew which are all taken on roughly the same time, and if you get them just before they're about to leave, they're actually competent. Most ships, a lot of them aren't really that good because you've got a lot of people who haven't got a clue what they're doing.
Yeah, the Spanish Navy relied...
They're at a disadvantage there.
Yeah. The Spanish fleet relied for a lot of its existence in the Age of Sail on the sheer mass it brought to most engagements. In parts of the world where other navies wouldn't have that same level of mass. So, for example, in the Caribbean, Spanish fleets were usually, not always, usually larger on average, with more ships of the line available, because for Spain, that wasn't some far-flung possession. That was a developed part of their nation, their empire, with big cities, dockyard districts, etc. It would be the same as for the Britishers operating off the 13 colonies prior to the American Revolution. The British could operate larger fleets off the 13 colonies because, the port facilities are there to allow them to do it. Resupply, repair, etc. Which is important during the Age of Sail.
Alright,
Next one is, how would Napoleonic era 74s and other ships fare in a big 1840s war, where 90-gun third rates are a thing and 150-gun first rates exist? Pre-steam power. Well, first of all, by the 1840s, steam power is prevailing rapidly. Like by that point, you're already 20 years into the era of steam on warships, and we're just getting into the era of screw ships of the line at this point. Only just, but we're getting there. But yeah, by the 1840s, the Napoleonic era ships of the line and other Napoleonic era ships in general get absolutely annihilated. Battles that in the Napoleonic War might have lasted hours last an hour to half an hour at most, as the Napoleonic era ships are shredded and annihilated by the overwhelming force, better sailing quality, and overall just better ships that they're up against. It's like sending... I know this is going to sound extreme, but it's like sending a pre-dreadnought against a fast battleship. That's how big the capability gap is. The first rates of the 1840s are running around with 3 gun decks of 32-pounders on all gun decks. They have a ridiculous firepower advantage. They're also tougher built. You can't rake them.
What you do probably see with the 74s is they get taken into dry dock and reconstructed to serve in the frigate role. And the distant station third rank station role,
which is what they were doing at this point in the 1840s anyway, because some of them did survive into that period. You are only going to throw them into major combats against peer units, not against your frontline assets of your opponent. Yeah. If a Napoleonic
not unless you have literally no other option.
Honestly, if it's the 1840s, I'd feel confident. I could guarantee you that a few paddle frigates would feel confident taking on a Napoleonic era 74 in a gun action, because those paddle frigates.
We don't have steam power, so.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but by the 1840s, the paddle frigate is a fact of life. It's not pre-steam power, sadly. It's pre-steam power on line ships, but
I will go with the main conceit of the question on this one.
which is
What you got,
free
Paul?
steam power. Yeah, Steve mentions in the YouTube that shell guns are a thing by the 1840s. as
Oh,
well.
that's even worse. That makes it even worse.
Yeah. So
Oh.
yeah, they'll be used. They'll be used maybe as distance station flagships and commerce protection, commerce raiding duties, and that would be about it. That's assuming they're not broken up for parts for the more useful assets of their respective navies.
Brandon Larson asks, what if during the Age of Exploration the UK or France had split the entire Americas between them to snub the Spanish Empire? How does that affect time up to the 1700s? Well, first off, ignoring the logistical side of that and how it would be physically impossible, that is one of those questions that I like to put politely in the category I call too many butterflies. I can't answer that question. If any of you boys want to take a crack at that, because I have no idea where to even start with that one. Covering 300 years of history.
I don't see how you're going to actually get a situation where France and Britain split the US in any way between them.
Oh no, Paul, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. It's the Americas, plural.
Yeah, and then you'd have to dig the Spanish out of South America. Good luck. Let me know how that one works out for you.
Yeah. I mean, Britain and France could perhaps say, come to an agreement when they're actually not at war with each other and say, okay, let's work together and kick the Spanish out of South America. Forget North America now. But it's still going to be a huge problem, and they're going to end up at war with each other at some point anyway.
Yeah, and then you've got 200 plus years of history beyond that point, which is just...
Right.
I can't even begin. I'm nowhere near familiar enough with the history to even try.
Knights, just to give you a heads up, remember you don't have the doctorate toting, this is my livelihood, naval historians here. I will look up and give you answers to what I can.
So
but just
I will
keep your expectations in check on that one.
Yep. I will answer what I can answer. Stephen Mayer asks, repeat from Seneca Nero, would the USA let Russia pass through the Panama Canal if it existed for the Russo-Japanese War? I don't believe belligerent warships were allowed to pass through the Panama Canal.
Yeah, and I think even if it would be a thing of, well, we're not technically stopping you from passing from canal passage, there may be a problem with the pumps. There may be a problem with the exact displacement and configuration of the vessels. There's all sorts of things that can be used as excuses to slow
we don't have any spare fuel for you either.
Yeah, to slow or deny access of vessels through canal locks. And I think the British government would be leaning hard on Washington to not permit easy passage of the Russian assets through the locks. How did the Spanish heavy cruiser Baleares lose a fight to a pair of destroyers, which should have had no trouble beating? Let me see when this was, because I could probably give a general answer.
It was...
No.
This wasn't... It's not even remotely that simple. According to Wikipedia, she, along with her sister ship Canarius and the light cruiser Almirante Severa, faced 2 Republican cruisers and 5 destroyers.
Knights, respond in chat, because Fu, you're talking about the 1932 Boleros, right?
Yes, the basically what would the counties look like if they weren't built under the treaties, essentially.
Okay. The 182 Knights, maybe? I mean, is that the Spanish derivative for victory? Then in which case, probably. If they wanted...
It's basically a case of the Republican destroyers seem to, from what I can see, and this is me going off basic information, the Nationalist and Republican cruisers banged away at each other, and it was in a what was apparently an ineffective gunnery duel. And bear in mind, this was at 2:15 a.m. at night in March. And I think what happened is 3 destroyers broke, because from what I can see, the Nationalists had no destroyers with their cruisers. So I think the Republican destroyers fired torpedoes. 2 or 3 hit Boleros between A and B turrets, which detonated her forward magazine. It's not very surprising. You have 3 cruisers fighting 2 cruisers and 5 destroyers. Honestly, if one side has destroyers and the other doesn't, and the destroyers are somewhat capable, which in this case they were, you've got no reason those destroyers aren't going to move for a torpedo attack and get an almost textbook launch off, and that's exactly what happened.
You're gonna have to tell me what SPS stands for, Knights, because
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Is that Spanish patrol ship? Is that I would say something, but it might violate YouTube's auto mod systems, so I will keep my dirty mouth to myself.
Did the RN learn anything from the demise of the Spanish heavy cruiser Boleros?
If they knew about it, yes.
Yeah, they knew about it, but that was basically it. Because bear in mind, she took torpedoes under her magazines and exploded. That could happen to any warship. There wasn't really anything to learn. Wow, if it turns out if you take 2 torpedoes to your forward area, right around where your magazines are, your ship explodes and you die. Big shock. I mean, the only thing really to learn here is don't send out large units without escorts. But the RN knew that anyway. Question 187 from... Oh, sorry, I'll just pull up again. Question 187. How quickly did the captain of the Almirante Severe, which was bullying the B-class destroyer HMS Vason, realise the RM was not playing nice when Hood arrived? You don't... Quickly, very quickly, because you don't attack...
Yeah.
You don't attack neutral shipping with surface vessels, because it ends badly. Really.
Probably about within 30 seconds of realizing that Hood was Hood and Hood was on an intercept course. And that's me assuming that that captain is particularly slow.
Oh, I would point out that if... Yeah. Question 186 for the 2 sides in the Spanish Civil War. How important was it to not attack neutral navies? Depends. For the Republicans, it was very important because they were seen as the legitimate government. For the Nationalists, it was less important, and there were many instances where Nationalist submarines and definitely Nationalist submarines, we swear, ignore the Italian flag, honest, attacked neutral shipping. Both civil and military. But for the Nationalists, it was very important. Question 185 for the 2 sides in the Spanish Civil War. Why did they think that attacking foreign nations' merchant traffic was ever going to be acceptable? They didn't.
Yep. And if the only justification you would have for that is it is neutral shipping to a hostile port.
Yeah. It was basically both sides' way of saying, we are aware of your activities. Don't think we're not aware. yeah, we know it was a neutral ship, but we also know it was carrying weaponry for our enemies.
All right, we'll jump back to 184 in a second, but just to break the chain here, I'm gonna jump ahead to Larson.
Yep, completely agree.
What if a modern AB
Ollie Burke.
Flight 3, thank you, Flight 3 flotilla was sent back in time with their crews and enough fuel and munitions for 3 months of non-stop operations in the Second World War?
One goes to the Mediterranean, one goes to the Atlantic, one goes to the Pacific, and honestly, if I were them, I would just lower the US flags, raise black flags, and just go on a spree against the Axis. Don't explain who you are, don't answer radio calls, you know the US is going to join the war, just show up, destroy Axis shipping and vital targets, and then just after the US joins the war, then you sail to a US port and go, hi guys, yeah, we were actually, you guys.
What probably happens, assuming that they are not turning pirate, their Tomahawks get employed to take out high command on the Axis powers, those that are engaged in warfare at the time that these ships are teleported back to, and then once those strikes make connections, their helos probably get taken off to British and American aerospace companies for capability replication.
It gets better, because Sikorsky is sat there as the Seahawks unloaded and is literally shouting, "Vindication!"
Yeah. He suddenly finds that he has no end of money. And after that, as long as they can keep the fuel, they can probably replicate. Even when the ship shot itself dry, they can probably replicate the gun ammunition, the dumb, quote unquote, gun ammunition, and they will make use of that Aegis system for their high value fleet components.
Honestly, putting a single Ollie Burke with a fleet in this timeline basically makes that fleet invulnerable to air attack. Because
the kamikaze war in the Pacific it's not a non-issue, but it is a greatly reduced issue. And then your ASW capability, because I think the Burke has onboard ASW systems.
It does, and
I think,
and side-mounted triple torpedo launchers.
Yeah. Even if it's only limited to its guns,
like the 20mm ammo can be reproduced for the Seawolves.
Yeah, and the 5-inch as well. That is going to be the single greatest defensive asset for a fleet section in existence until it can be rebuilt. And they will be it actually could be interesting, because you're going to have one that's sent back to a U.S. port for replication, and then however many are left in that flotilla are going to probably be parceled out to task groups. Roosevelt will travel in a Burke. He will not travel in a battleship. He will travel in a Burke, because the Burke will be the status asset.
Yeah.
And it also will be the safest asset to put him in.
Yep.
And you might actually also see the jet age come about sooner. The Allies might actually beat the Germans to the punch for deployed turbine aircraft, because the
Allies did beat the Germans to the punch. It's just that
combat deployed, though.
No, not combat deployed. But then again, the only reason the Allies didn't is that they chose not to.
Yes, but if you suddenly have, like, let's say the Burkes get ported back to 41, December 8th, 1941.
Yep.
And watch me screw up my year again on that one. You are suddenly going to have a lot better understanding of the metallurgy you need, and you will have on-hand examples of high compression turbojets.
Brandon Larson makes an excellent point. Burks versus V1s and V2s. I mean, the V1s, they aren't needed, but the Burks could actually shoot down V2s.
Yeah, Aegis will protect them against V2s for as long as they have
SM2 and SM3.
loaded VLS cells. And my world as well, Gorbian. In case you haven't watched Dr. Clarke's stream for the last 2 months, I had to sneakernet Knights' questions out of YouTube chat into Discord chat. And then I built a bot, so now I've automated it. Woohoo!
And the numbers,
yes,
really are.
Yes, that does mean he has roughly 190 questions.
Who knows? Because I have less
stream.
people. Because I have less people here rather than we do normally, I might be able to get him down to 0. Knight 6831 again asks, "Was the Spanish American War
only for a week?
Was the death knell of the unprotected cruiser? No, the unprotected cruiser basically died when the protected cruiser came along. The reason the Spanish kept building them was, and other nations as well, is because that was the name they'd always had. But in reality, they were if you look at the unprotected cruisers that people were building afterwards, they were basically slowly but steadily transitioning into what we would recognize as sloops and frigates for colonial work. It's just that some nations call them unprotected cruisers.
Yeah, and then for question 184, why can't we call Spain irrelevant in the global pecking order? As in a war, Spanish Guinea and Spanish Morocco would fall easily.
Okay, so I assume we're talking about the Spain. When are we talking about Spain? It depends when. It's very important.
Yeah.
Well, if you're talking about Spanish-American War Spain, the only reason the US was able to win in Cuba is because they kept the seas open. A lot of people don't realize quite how much trouble the Spanish troops in Cuba gave the Americans. They were the better troops than the Americans, to be blunt. It's been stated numerous times. It's been stated numerous times that if the Americans hadn't had full control of the seas, if it had been, it doesn't even need to be Spanish control. It just needs to be intermittent back and forth, like one side controlling it, then the other side controlling it, then back and forth. If it had even been that, Cuba would not have fallen. The Spanish troops would have been able to grind the US to a stalemate and then probably push them off the island. If we're going later than that, in the aftermath of the Spanish-American War, you see Spain go through a series of a bit of instability. Then Spain does quite well out of World War I, makes quite a lot of money. Then it squanders that money during the Rift campaign. But the fact that Spain was even able to do the Rift campaign in Morocco, for as long as it did, is not something that an irrelevant power could do. It was a full-on colonial war. And also, a power that operates 3 dreadnought battleships is not irrelevant. I don't care how small they are. It's still 3 more than anyone else below them has.
And also, I will punch back. I say punch. Sorry, Knights. But don't underestimate the ability of more established nations to influence other nations, especially in a time where monarchy and similar systems are relevant. Come on, brain. I have a brain and it works.
Spanish monarchy? Question mark?
Why do I feel like a bunch of questions just got blatted?
No, they didn't.
Oh, there it is. That's because we skipped. That's why my brain is broken. You can never call a nation that has any significant degree of soft power irrelevant in the global pecking order because of what can they call upon with that power? How many allies can they bring to their aid?
Like, yeah, it's all well and like the great powers are all well and good watching Spain tear itself apart because that's Spain just doing it to itself. Anyone else tries to interfere in Spain, you'll find people lining up to say, "Oi, just a minute," very quickly.
Yeah, it's the old thing of nobody punches my brother but me.
Like,
Kind of deal.
like the British would be there in a second, saying because like they could trust whatever form Spain arrives in, unless it's some sort of extreme government, which none of the sides of the Spanish Civil War were, to not touch Portugal. But anyone who conquers Spain or puppets Spain cannot be guaranteed to not touch Portugal. So,
Gibraltar.
yeah, and Gibraltar. But yeah. Where were we? 181. With that World War II breaking out in 1939, the RN gets 190 Blackburn skewer and 103 Blackburn rocks as planned. Do the rocks go before the skewers? Yes, very, very quickly. In fact, the rocks may even be converted into additional skewers. Because the thing is, bear in mind, is that I've learned from Rex and Dr. Clarke, respectively, the skewer was ordered as a combined fighter dive bomber, as basically a cover to get an actual decent monoplane dive bomber into the fleet air arm.
The 180 compared to the
Much better.
compared to the US's armored and protected, how were the 8 armored and 9 protected cruisers that Spain had? I think
the armored. Okay, so Spain's armored cruisers are a mixed bag. You've got the. I'll discount the. There's 4 older ones I'm discounting because they are not really worth much of anything and are in a bad state. On paper, Spanish cruisers look pretty good. Most of them carry 10-inch guns in all angles, loading barbettes. And a decent secondary battery, and are very thickly armoured, but the armour schemes are usually quite bad. The cruiser that's building during the Spanish-American War and commissions after it is basically the one that gets it all right. The good guns, decent armour layout and scheme, good reliable engines, decent protection. But of course, she's building during the Spanish-American War and is only finished afterward. The ones that come before her are a mixed bag. But they're not terrible, and the US and the Spanish have more of them than the Americans do. And make no mistake, their armor schemes might be bad, but those 10-inch guns will hurt. The protected cruisers are also a mixed bag. There's about a good 3 or 4 of them that are actually fairly decent and will go toe-to-toe with any American protected cruiser. And then there are a few smaller ones that will go toe-to-toe with the American diminutives, which the Americans also possess. But there's one small problem. All of this is moot because the Spanish Navy is so corrupt it's not even funny. As Dr. Clarke has told me.
That's what really screwed them over at the start of hostilities, because you had ships that had not drilled in forever, and you had
ammunition that hadn't been fired,
that had been compromised or wasn't correct from factory. So, yeah, one of the things that really sunk the Spanish in the Spanish-American War was how badly their corruption had sapped their warfighting capability.
Yeah, it's honestly kind of tragic. It kind of ruins any what if the Spanish had won the Spanish-American War, because in order to preface that, you basically have to preface it with what if the Spanish had maintained their fleet, because that then sets the conditions for them to win the Spanish-American War. Question 179, I can answer this really quickly. Why was the Wright R26,000 that one initially selected for the F6F Hellcat? Short answer, I don't know.
Based on the wiki article, commonality of parts, as it was the same power plant that they were putting in, I think that would be the Avenger.
Fair enough. There you are, basically. Question 1.
And then they went to, just for everybody else's reference, they went to the R20, the Pratt & Whitney R28 Double Wasp, based on feedback from the Pacific Theater and how the Wildcat was handling zeros. And that was a top-down instruction, not a bottom-up instruction.
Yep. Question 178. Why is it forgotten that the Americans and British could afford major losses, whereas the Axis can't?
I can simply answer this, because infrastructure is not sexy.
And
infrastructure and logistics are not sexy.
And I would also point out that could afford kind of understates the fact that, yes, they could, but also, no, not really. That sort of boils down conflict to a grand strategic level all the time. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but despite the fact that, yes, the Allies were always going to win the Second World War, it didn't look it for a good chunk of the Second World War. Like, there were moments when it looked as though excrement had met fan and had a good relationship with the wall. Like, for example, getting towards the end of 1941, the North African campaign is at one of its worst phases. The Germans are knocking on the door of Moscow. Britain is standing basically alone. Like,
with the aid of its colonies. No,
good point. Like, Britain can't afford major losses at that point. They can't. Like, any losses they take could lead to reverses that could not be easily... Like, for example, let's say if the British Mediterranean fleet gets clobbered. Or let's say they lose, like, 2 battleships and a carrier in the Mediterranean. That now puts a massive pinch on the British Mediterranean fleet and may lead to the loss of North Africa, which is actually going to cause massive problems. And may lead to the loss of Middle Eastern oil fields, which again, this is the thing. They can't afford major losses. No side really can. Like the Battle of Midway, for example. If the Japanese had clean-sweeped Midway, that puts the war back by another year, maybe another year and a half.
I mean,
if
you think about it, Britain lost a substantial amount of heavy ships up until the middle of 1942. Aircraft carriers, Hood, Barham, amongst a few. Cruisers, a lot of damage to other shipping and things like that. It was looking sticky if it wasn't for the fact that there was the Lend-Lease and the fact that the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and Germany, and the mustachioed man decided that he was going to declare war on America. There was no guarantee America was going to declare war on Germany at that time. So it wasn't as plain sailing as perhaps people seem to think at times.
Yeah. But Paul's basically got it in one. It's not forgotten that the Americans and British could afford to take major losses. It's just not a fact. The Americans and the British couldn't afford to take major losses. That's only something that we've applied to the Second World War in hindsight. It doesn't measure up when you look at it through the lens of people at the time.
Yeah, it's the British. The one thing I will say is that on an absolute scale, the capacity for the major allies to soak major losses is higher than that of the Axis powers. However, because the major allies are, every single one of them, a democracy, successive major losses of major units or major battles would see unrest. You would see significant problems that they probably could not deal with, and those governments, in the British sense of the word, would fall. Unless they could somehow manage the population such that those losses could be accepted. But
I
then
mean,
you're
there
getting into
were
sociology.
Although it was worth
there,
pointing
there,
out.
were- there were situations in 1941 and 1942 where there was various strikes in certain areas in Britain because of the conditions and things like that, which were basically hushed up
Yeah.
and kept out of the public eye. There was some unrest, but you were lucky in that, however good or bad Churchill as a decision maker was pre the Second World War and even during the Second World War, he was a very good person to have as a leader to inspire people, and he did. Even people who were totally opposite in political view to him had an admiration for the fact that he was so confident that Britain and the Empire would prevail, even at the darkest times. So you can probably look at 101 books and have 101 different viewpoints on it. At the end of the day, we won. So they obviously did something right.
Moving on to 177, would the RN ever consider going for a 5-shaft configuration?
I can't think of any Navy that would. Like, why?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give the boilerplate answer of if the benefits for adding in that 5th shaft outweigh the additional weight and mechanical complexity that having that 5th shaft gives you. It's the same math as anything else.
Yeah. Question 176. I'm going to very, very quickly answer this. If World War II holds off, do the RN's 103 Blackburn rocks get sold to Finland as surplus to support their fleet of 33 Blackburn rocks? Possibly, but it depends how much the Finns can afford, because the Finns are not made of money, as it turns out.
And also depends upon the status of the Winter War.
Yeah. Now, Seneca Nero asks a really interesting question, which I've been waiting to answer. Question: some bright spot politicians said that the British ships of the line were always frontline assets, and now you have to refit a ship of the line to be able to fight in World War II. What would you do with it? Oh, it's really quite simple here. You fit it with an auxiliary diesel. You cut down most of the deck. You leave the masts on. And you fit a few 3-inch guns on pedestal mounts. And you fit an ASDIC set, and you fit all of the depth charge launchers, and you turn it into the world's best anti-submarine asset, because when it's stalking a submarine, provided the wind's not doing funny things, it can just cut its engine, and if it's been razzed down this aggressively, it might even be able to outpace the submarine when it's underwater. Just on sail power alone.
Has anyone told you that you're an exceptionally cruel individual?
Yes, they have.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
And the submarine's not going to know anything's there.
All the hulks which existed until the end of the Second World War were actually in use during the Second World War. They were used as training and storage and things like that. You just need to look at quite a few of the different ships around the British Isles that were basically in ordinary roofed over and were, training ships for naval people. But there were also training ships for other services, such as the Marines, or they were used as bunker ships for ships, actually, modern ships. So you would lose that facility
I think I only have to convert
honestly,
one.
I don't think you.
I think I only have to
I
convert
don't think
one.
you even need to convert.
That's the
I don't
problem.
think you even need to convert any, because you have other sailing ships around, which were not ex-naval ships, but I mean a lot of, schooners and things like that.
The problem
which,
is
would have been. I mean, there were a number of schooners in the First World War which were used as Q ships.
Oh yeah, completely. The problem is that I'm being forced to convert a ship of the line by the question. That's the problem. I literally had, and it said frontline combatant, so I had to think of something that wouldn't immediately condemn the crew to death. So I thought, well...
Yeah, something, we who are about to die, salute you, something.
Yeah, it just seems to be a waste of a resource.
Oh no, it is. You're absolutely right. It is a massive waste. But that's what the question wanted.
Alrighty, Brendan Larson jumping in with, what if the U.S. had the fleet it had at the end of World War II during the Korean War? I mean, it kinda did.
Yeah, there hadn't been that much drawdown. The things that had mainly gone were a bunch of the older, worn-out vessels. The real good stuff, like the stuff worth keeping, was there. The Des Moines, the Clevelands, the Iowas,
Alaskas,
Essexes, Midways.
I guess the thing is, Korea is not that big. It does not have a huge navy, even today. At a certain point, you're bringing too much force than you can actually use against the target.
Yeah, the Korean War was not naval. It was sit off the shoreline, fly sorties, and blow stuff up on the ground.
Okay. Fleet, to answer your statement, you just have to right-click that action and disable it, and it'll stop the carryover.
Will do. But yeah, so back to Knight's question quickly. If the Gloucester Gladiator Mark II and Sea Gladiator were designed like the A5M Claude, minus the lack of self-sealing tanks, how does that change the battles where the Gladiator was used? Do you mean as monoplanes? What do you mean like the A5M Claude? Do you mean as a monoplane? Do you mean with 2 machine guns in the nose? Do you mean with a shielded undercarriage? I don't understand how the Gladiator can be like the A5M Claude.
What killed the Wasp?
Either of you two understand what he means by like the A5M Claude?
No, it's pretty much it's the same thing as there was a question about here. Which aircraft is better? And it's like, better at what? Because I know the Brewster Buccaneer was not used as a, what was it supposed to be?
Turret fighter.
Dive bomber, right?
Yeah, dive bomber / scout aircraft. And the Blackburn Rock is a turret fighter, which is just different. It's not.
Yeah, neither were used in their design. Well, the Buccaneer was designed from the wheels up to be a dive bomber, a scout bomber. But it wasn't used as a scout bomber. Nobody wanted it.
Knight has clarified. So he said, if the Gloucester Gladiator and the Sea Gladiator were designed like the A5M Claude, minus the lack of self-sealing fuel tanks. So if it's a fixed landing gear monoplane, then how does that change the battles where the Gladiators were used? It depends what the flight characteristics, armament, range, maneuverability, survivability of this aircraft are.
Hypothetical aircraft is.
Because you've changed it. And
it's if we're going from fixed to non-fixed, you're gonna have.
Oh no!
It's essentially just.
Yeah, it still has fixed undercarriage.
I mean, the Gladiator was a very good fighter for its time, 30s. Even if it was like the A5M Claude,
They're
would still be
contemporaries.
at a
Everyone forgets
disadvantage.
this. The Gladiator and the A5M
Well, it
were
would be-
contemporaries.
Yeah, but it would be at a disadvantage if it was fighting an aircraft such as the BF-109.
It's got
would
nothing to fall back on,
probably have
basically.
It would have an advantage over the Stuka because it would be a similar airframe shape. Although it's not a dive bomber, still a fighter.
Yeah.
So it might have a use, but by then, the Gladiator Mark IIs were basically only in reserve squadrons and being used as operational training aircraft before people were going on to Hurricane and the Spitfires. So they weren't a huge amount of combat, really, compared
No.
to other aircraft at that time.
And just as a heads up to
From memory.
the people who are watching, the bot will be disabled at 22:20 GMT, so in about 3 minutes.
Question 174 and 173, which I'm going to merge into one question here because it's mostly the same thing. So I'm going to say 173 first because it's a good lead-in. Does 24 to 29,000 tons sound about right for a USS Wasp CV7 built sensibly? And if she was built to that size, in hindsight, how she should have been, how much harder to kill does that make her? Well, first things first, yes, that does sound about right because then you've just built another Yorktown. Basically. That's literally what you do with that tonnage. You build another Yorktown and call it Wasp. And how much harder to kill does that make her? It makes her as hard to kill as a Yorktown, because she's a Yorktown now, just called Wasp. If you give me Yorktown-style displacements and tell me to build a better Wasp, I'm just going to build another Yorktown and slap Wasp's name on it. I'm going to pull a Hornet.
And then look very pleased with myself.
That's all I have to
Why
do.
did my streamer bot suddenly open? What did I do? Yeah.
Question...
$171. If the Hawker Sea Fury entered service in 43 when
In our time...
OTL?
Our timeline.
Okay.
The Blackburn
Firebrand
Firebrand...
did-
Hang on. The Blackburn Firebrand didn't enter service till 1945. But anyway, getting that aside, that doesn't matter right now. It's not important for the
That's what
question.
he's saying.
Steve weighs in that the Sea Fury is one of the few propeller aircraft to have shot down a jet.
Well, if the Sea Fury entered service in 1943, the carrier fleets have a better fighter. The Axis are in about as much trouble as they were before. Not literally, I'm sorry, but it's a single class of fighter entering a service with a single nation in, quite frankly, for the air war over Europe and the Pacific, fairly limited numbers. It is not going to meaningfully change things.
Yeah, forget the Pacific. If you think about it just in the European and the Mediterranean theatre, and Biscay, everything, it possibly would reduce the amount of aircraft, amount of ships which were lost to submarine action in Biscay, because they would have been as able to interdict the Condors as the Wildcat. That's
The thing is, if the Sea Fury is entering service in 43, by 43 the Condors are basically fading out of Luftwaffe service by that point. The Condor Scourge really ran from 41 through end of 42. By 43, you're looking at the Condor Scourge basically dying. Or already being dead at that point.
It depends on when you're talking about in 43.
Yeah, but that's not the main reason why I don't think
It's
that would be the
early or
case.
Just sorry, I'm going to horn in here real quick because
Oh,
we're at.
yes. Yep, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Yep, turning it off. Yep, bonk. It's no longer enabled. Okay, good. So these are the questions we've got, and we're going to work through these.
Yep.
So, very quickly. So, the Hawker Sea Fury would, I think, be filtering into Royal Navy service, which means it'll be on the fleet carriers, and the fleet carriers aren't hovering around the Bay of Biscay. They won't be... Like, it may accelerate development of the Fury, which may lead to Coastal Command getting some of them, but it's not likely to affect operations in the Bay of Biscay. It might reduce losses to kamikazes in the Pacific, since that's where it's going to really have the most impact when the British Pacific Fleet forms up in 1945. But even then, at that point, you're just kicking a dead horse, because Japan's already on the out and out. Gorbian asks, how will the Deutschland class hull fare if it was used for other classes, aka a CLA or a CVL? Well, it's great for a cruiser. You can get probably something like a ship with 12 5.9s or 8-inch. I mean, that's basically what the Hippers are basically a refined Deutschland hull. That's basically what the Hippers are. And a CVL, yeah, you could build a fairly effective CVL on a Deutschland hull. Yeah, I mean, if the US can do it with the Clevelands, the Germans can do it with the Deutschlands. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
And then Steve weighs in with, I think Dr. Clarke was asked this at some time ago about the hull being used as a carrier. The problem is that the fat clown in charge of the LW, just like it was with the Graf Luftwaffe, thank you. To 170, if you could erase the 330 Blackburn Firebrands in exchange for something else, what would you go for? Not familiar enough with aviation to comment on that myself. So,
question 170: if you could arrange 330 Blackburn Firebrands in exchange for something else, what would you go for? Blackburn Firebrand is just post-war. There's not... Okay, bearing in mind, a lot of the Blackburn Firebrand's bad rap comes from War Thunder. Bear this in mind. It is a meme. As an actual strike aircraft in actual service, it was a late-generation piston strike aircraft. Not anything magical, but it's...
An adequate aircraft.
It's fine. And bear in mind, the Mark IV was the one that entered service. Like, a lot of the problems with the Mark 1s through 3 were getting it ready for carrier ops. It's the Mark IV that enters service with the Fleet Air Arm once all the kinks are ironed out.
On.
And you have to remember that as well, if you think in Britain, as in America, you have a lot of different aircraft manufacturers fighting for the same sort of procurement. So they're trying to, because it's war time as well, they're trying to rush on stuff that it does take time to iron out kinks.
And bear in mind they're doing this during the war.
That's right. I mean, you're in a situation where, with jets and things like that, it's certainly sped up the jet age because of the war and pressure that was on the hull, and then it getting moved over to America and things like that. But in a way, you've got too many cooks, and they're all trying to do similar things rather than specialise in certain areas. But that's just the way of, competition within a non-state-run system. You could say that that was possibly one of the problems post-war, was that instead of clubbing together and working a little bit more collaboratively, you had so many different designs and different ideas, of which some of them were absolutely excellent and some of them were absolutely god-awful. So, that's just the way of it.
Alrighty, 168. How much was the Lexington's length and beam? The Admiral's length and beam make it a better hull than the length and beam of the Amagi class.
None of us are equipped to answer that question because we're sadly not Dr. Alex Clarke.
And again, define better. Just eyeballing it, it looks like they have all the Amagis have a slightly less favorable length to beam ratio, so they're going to be a little slower for the same horsepower. But if you're asking like a percentage, just do the percentage math on the comparative ratios, and that'll tell you. Also, draft is going to be a factor. The Amagi probably draws less water, which does work to its advantage in some cases. A lot of these better questions, I will point out, it's a better in what way? Because, like, I'll go back to the Brewster Buccaneer. It was panned by both the RN and the USN as a dive bomber. Neither of them wanted it for that. The US didn't really want it for anything, but the Royal Navy didn't. One of the navies didn't want it for anything, but the other navy used it for second line duties, for which it was fine. So, better is relative. 166, do we judge Blackburn aircraft limited too harshly? I can't answer this because I hadn't heard of it.
I'd say yes, because Blackburn did produce some aircraft that were considered odd, but most of their aircraft were on average either average or some were really good.
And Steve Wake...
And by far the best one, it was the Buccaneer.
And they knocked that one out of the park.
Which is what Steve weighs in with.
Oh, yeah.
Steve, you have a hypothetical engagement between one of the Scharnhorsts and one of the Alaskas in the North Atlantic in 1944. However, the question is not who wins the battle better, but who better survives the Atlantic storm. Honestly, both of those ships are seaworthy vessels in the plus 30,000 ton range. I don't really see either vessel succumbing in any real sense to the Atlantic storm in any way that would impede their combat capability. Both...
I think he means possibly by combat capability in the fact that is one better able to fire accurately at the other.
If both are in an Atlantic storm, both will... If it's 1944, I'm going to give the Scharnhorst the benefit of having whatever radar fire control fit she would have had in 1944 rather than the one she would have had in 1943. Which is going to make her at least, I think, on par with the Alaskas and able to shoot similarly accurately to the Alaskas. They've both got high velocity small guns, 11-inch and 12-inch respectively. The thing is, though, the Scharnhorsts do have a limited ability to resist 14-inch shell fire. We see this throughout their career. They can shrug off some hits from 14-inch guns, which the Alaska's 12-inch has similar penetration capability to, but the Alaskas cannot resist Scharnhorst's guns. So I'd honestly still say that the Scharnhorsts have the ability to carry that. It's going to come down to who hits first. These one-on-one engagements always do.
Are their sea-keeping abilities similar?
I'd say so. They're roughly about the same size.
I don't know. Yeah, but I mean, you can have two ships which are the same size, and one's an absolute dog in a storm. And the other
I don't know their sea-keeping capabilities. I'd have to ask Dr. Clarke. So,
if I had to pick, I would say the Alaska, because the Americans, at least on their bigger assets, tend to be less eager to load them to the gills, whereas the Germans like duplicative systems.
I will point out the Scharnhorsts did prove themselves to be quite good sea boats in rough seas. Like, for example, look at North Cape. Scharnhorst was firing with some degree of accuracy during North Cape.
Yeah, so
Before
then in
she
that
died.
case, it's. I mean, I'm going to let my bias show and say if I have to pick one or the other, I'm going to pick the Alaska, but it's probably much for muchness at that point.
What if the Bismarck class was designed and built in the US but had kept the overall hull ship that it had been built in Germany? What does it look like and how does it perform in the Pacific Theatre? Okay, if it's the Bismarck, congratulations. Allow me to introduce the newly built USS Iowa. I don't know what you were expecting. It's a hull about the same size and just tonnage as an Iowa. It's going to be used to build an Iowa. I just don't know what you were expecting.
Yeah, I mean, if it's overall, they're probably gonna cut the sides down so it fits through the canal. The U.S. is never going to build a ship that will not go through the canal. And then they're going to probably change up the subdivision and how. Yeah, it's. Unless you're forcing them
engineered to the nth degree.
Yeah, unless you're forcing them to keep the hull profile, it's going to be an Iowa, and even then, it's just going to be an Iowa but fatter.
And you better believe with better machinery and other things, they're going to squeeze 31, 32 knots out of her. So again, she'll have Iowa speed as well.
Possibly slightly less interesting subdivision, if I'm remembering conversations about that ship correctly.
Also, no turtleback armor scheme, all or nothing all the way. Knights. In fact, no, I know what she'll be. She'll be an Iowa with 12 guns. That's what she'll be.
You'd also have dual-purpose anti-aircraft.
Yeah, that's where you. That's where you.
Rather than the.
Yeah. It's basically the combination of all or nothing and dual purpose that's going to save the weight, that's going to get you that fourth triple. Knights 681, would an Omaha carrier have gone the same way as HMS Vindictive? No. HMS Vindictive was basically lost because, well, she was a carrier during the Second World War escorting convoys. Oh, do you mean, sorry, never mind. I'm confusing her with something else.
Devotion.
Yeah, I'm confusing her with, so Vindictive was reconverted back into a cruiser and then into a training ship, and then she became a fleet repair ship. If an Omaha... It depends on what the US decide they're doing. If she's the replacement for Langley, no, probably not. She probably has the same fate as Langley. Converted into some form of quasi-seaplane tender.
Would she be scrapped? Which is what they did with a lot of the stuff that was surplus.
Yeah, at the end. Brandon Larson asks one last question to finish us off. What if the US fleet from the beginning of World War I was sent with crew and fuel and ordnance back in time to the Spanish-American War? Why are you bullying the Spanish? They're already going to lose. Why are you bullying them?
This is fun.
Stop. No, I like the Spanish. I want them to win the Spanish-American War, to tell the Americans to stay in their lane.
Okay. Fleet, you like Hoche.
Yes, what's your point?
I'm saying you don't like normal things.
Shush, I like normal things.
Face it, you know I'm right.
No, you're not. I refuse to...
Whatever you gotta tell yourself to get to sleep at night.
But yeah, so if the...
Steve covers it quite well in his comment. But they still have issues with accurate gunnery.
Yeah, but at that point it doesn't really matter because it's the Spanish-American War. They could just sail in close and they could just sail within like 2,000 yards. Because like even at that range, the Spanish still won't hit them because one side has fire control equipment, the US from 1914, and the other side has no fire control equipment. So at that point, that's moot. And one side showing up with dreadnoughts and turbine-driven cruisers. It's a walk.
Seneca, I suggest you scroll up And to where you see I say questions close, and then copy off all the questions that you've submitted so that you can catch them next time.
Yeah, because Dr. Clarke will be back next
Okay.
time. I would
Yeah.
go for longer, but unfortunately I do have work in the morning, so I will have to say goodbye. I hope that this has been a... I know it's...
For some reason, just to interrupt you, just for some reason, and to keep Knight happy, his 167 didn't come through for some reason.
Oh, what
which
was his
Why was the
167?
type? Why was the type 988 Anglo-Dutch 3D radar to be and the from frigate BRBI 23
23 3D.
3D ray housed in a dome?
Do you,
have no
honest
idea,
answer?
mate.
No idea. None of us will know the answer to that one. Yeah, sorry, this is the disadvantages of not having Dr. Clarke. We don't know. And modern naval history just is not my area. Right, I hope that all of you have found this enjoyable. I hope that all of you have found this a suitable substitute for the poorly Dr. Clarke. I'm sure he'll be back next week for you all. Now, for those of you who are watching, just watch this space, because tomorrow, on Ramblings on this channel, we have the entire Shipshape crew discussing the Scandinavia trip. So please tune in for that one. Apart from that, it's goodbye from me, and goodbye from my other two members of the panel.
Right.
And I hope you've all had a fantastic time. Take care, folks, and I will catch you next time. Bye-bye!
And remember to tap the like button.
We
Metrics for Metrics God.
don't do that here.
And share.
Yeah, we don't do that here. I don't tell people to like and subscribe. It's not what I do. If
I didn't tell them to subscribe. I just told them to like.
Oh, you tricked me to doing it. Oh no. Good. All right. Anyway, on that terrible disappointment.